What if Hollywood's sharpest comic was hiding the names of its most closeted stars? Paul Lynde made millions laugh, but behind the camp and charisma was a secret life filled with passion, pain, and forbidden love. In this video, we uncover the hidden romances Lynde kept from the spotlight, revealing the iconic actors he claimed to have dated in secret. These aren't just gossip, they're the untold truths of old Hollywood's silent fraternity. Paul Lynde was born Paul Edward Lynde on June 13, 1926, in Mount Vernon, Ohio. Paul was the fifth of 6 children in a modest working-class family. From a young age, he stood out for his sense of humor, dramatic flair, and penchant for making others laugh, a spark that would ultimately propel him from small-town Ohio to the bright lights of Hollywood. Lynde's path to stardom began with his formal training at Northwestern University, a prestigious institution known for producing talented performers. There, he studied drama and became friends with future entertainment icons like Cloris Leachman and Charlotte Rae. These formative years helped him develop the unique comedic style that would later make him a household name. After graduating in 1948, he began working in stand-up comedy, radio, and early television, honing his craft in a challenging industry where individuality could be both an asset and a hurdle. His big break came in 1960 when he starred as Harry McAfee, the exasperated father in the Broadway musical Bye Bye Birdie, a role he reprised in the 1963 film adaptation. His comedic timing and flamboyant delivery won over audiences and critics alike. This role cemented his place as a master of the comedic supporting character, capable of stealing scenes with just a few well-timed lines. From there, his career took off with appearances in popular television series and films throughout the 1960s and 1970s. He had small but memorable roles in movies such as Son of Flubber, 1963, and Beach Blanket Bingo, 1965, showcasing his comedic flair and versatility. However, it was television that would ultimately make Paul Lynde a household name. He became a familiar face on numerous sitcoms and variety shows, especially as a frequent guest on the Hollywood Squares. His position as the center square on that iconic game show turned him into a cultural institution. With his sardonic humor, flamboyant charm, and masterful delivery of double entendre, Lynde became the standout personality of the program. His quick, often risque one-liners, many of which are now legendary, earned him a devoted fan base and made him one of the most in-demand television personalities of the 1970s. In addition to the Hollywood Squares, Lynde starred in his own series, The Paul Lynde Show, 1972 to 1973, and was a recurring character, Uncle Arthur, on the beloved sitcom Bewitched. As Uncle Arthur, Lynde brought a mischievous magical energy to the show, playing a fun-loving and slightly sinister warlock whose interactions with Elizabeth Montgomery's Samantha added a new layer of comedy to the series. His flamboyant style and biting humor made Uncle Arthur one of the most memorable characters in the show's history, and the role became a favorite among viewers. In addition to his memorable roles in television and film, Lynde lent his unmistakable voice to animated characters, most notably as the voice of Templeton the Rat in the beloved 1973 adaptation of Charlotte's Web. His performance as Templeton was both comical and strangely endearing, making the gluttonous rat a favorite among viewers of all ages. This role highlighted Lynde's versatility, proving that his talents extended well beyond live-action comedy. Paul Lynde's career also included starring in his own television specials and variety shows, such as the Paul Lynde Halloween Special, 1976, which has since become a cult classic. Although these specials were often seen as over-the-top and kitschy at the time, they have since been re-evaluated and appreciated for their camp value and Lynde's unabashed showmanship. These projects further demonstrated his unique ability to combine satire, flamboyance, and self-parody into an entertaining and compelling package. Paul Lynde's life, while marked by professional success and popularity as a comedic actor, was also characterized by a long and tumultuous struggle with alcoholism, a battle that profoundly impacted both his personal and professional relationships. Throughout much of his adult life, Lynde battled alcohol dependency, a condition that frequently led to public disturbances and numerous legal issues. His addiction often pushed him into erratic behavior, which resulted in a number of arrests, particularly for public intoxication. These episodes were not isolated. They became a recurring pattern that increasingly tarnished his image in the entertainment industry. Friends and colleagues described a stark contrast between Lynde's public persona, the witty, flamboyant jokester, and the darker personality that emerged when he drank. According to several who knew him well, including Hollywood Squares host Peter Marshall and actress Kay Ballard, Lynde's demeanor could turn sharply cruel and even hostile under the influence of alcohol. He was known to ridicule friends in public and private, often using cutting, sarcastic humor that crossed the line into meanness. In some cases, his behavior allegedly escalated to violence, leaving those close to him wary of his unpredictable moods when drinking. One of the most tragic and haunting episodes of Lynde's life occurred on the night of July 18, 1965. While staying at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel in San Francisco, Lynde was accompanied by his friend James Bing Davidson, a 24-year-old aspiring actor. According to reports, the two had been drinking heavily over the course of the evening. While the full details remain unclear, it was reported by the Associated Press that the two men were horsing around in their hotel room when Davidson lost his balance and accidentally fell from the window, plunging 8 stories to his death. The incident deeply affected Lynde, who was reportedly devastated by the loss. Although authorities ruled the death accidental, the tragedy followed Lynde for the rest of his life, both emotionally and reputationally. It fed into the growing perception that Lynde's life was spiraling out of control, and it underscored the dangerous consequences of his increasingly erratic lifestyle, fueled by alcohol and emotional instability. More than a decade later, in October 1977, Lynde became embroiled in another controversy that further stained his public image. He had returned to Northwestern University, his alma mater, to serve as Grand Marshal for the school's homecoming parade, a role that should have been a celebratory honor. However, after the parade, Lynde entered a fast food restaurant near the university campus and reportedly began behaving in a disruptive and offensive manner. Witnesses stated that he made racist remarks and gestures toward Dr. James P. Pitts, a respected African-American professor at the university. The incident sparked outrage and disappointment among those who had welcomed Lynde back to campus. In the aftermath, Lynde attempted to explain his actions by attributing them to a combination of exhaustion and intoxication. While this explanation did little to mitigate the offense, it pointed again to the chronic role that alcohol played in his lapses in judgment and personal conduct. Just a few months later, in January 1978, Lynde encountered further legal trouble while visiting Salt Lake City, Utah, to film a segment for the popular television variety show Donnie and Marie. During his stay, Lynde spent time at a local tavern. While he was inside, someone broke into his car and stole several valuables. After discovering the burglary, Lynde confronted police officers outside the establishment. At the time, the officers were investigating a separate car break-in nearby, but Lynde allegedly became agitated and repeatedly insisted that they immediately address his situation instead. The confrontation escalated, and Lynde was arrested and charged with interfering with a police officer. Though the charge was later dropped, the incident once again highlighted his recurring difficulties managing stressful situations, especially while under the influence. It also underscored his increasing frustration and emotional volatility, which often led to overreactions and altercations with figures of authority. Despite these setbacks, the turn of the new decade brought a significant shift in Lynde's life. By early 1980, he had made the difficult but determined decision to seek sobriety. Committing himself to a path of recovery, Lynde became both alcohol and drug-free, reportedly making a concerted effort to regain control over his life and salvage his health and career. Those close to him observed a notable improvement in his demeanor and overall well-being during this period. Although the shadows of his past struggles never fully disappeared, Lynde's choice to get sober marked a redemptive chapter in his life, a testament to his desire to move forward and confront the demons that had plagued him for years. Sadly, his time of recovery would be relatively short-lived, as Lynde passed away in 1982 at the age of 55. But his final years reflected an effort at personal redemption, one that stood in contrast to many of the troubled incidents that had preceded them. When Hollywood stars were required to maintain spotless public images, often at the cost of hiding their true selves, Paul Lynde lived a double life. Though flamboyant in performance and sharp-tongued in wit, Lynde never publicly acknowledged his homosexuality during his lifetime, a decision shaped as much by studio pressure as by the prevailing social conservatism of mid-20th century America. Yet in his private world, beyond the sound stages of Warner Brothers and the set of Hollywood squares, Lynde was intimately connected with some of the most prominent male actors of the Golden Age, forming relationships that were as passionate as they were discreet. In a series of candid recollections, some shared privately with friends, others hinted at in unpublished letters and barroom confessions, Lynde spoke of a secret romantic network that spanned studios, dressing rooms, and penthouses tucked away in the Hollywood Hills. According to close confidants, Lynde claimed to have shared moments of deep affection and physical intimacy with several major stars who, like him, were forced to suppress their identities for the sake of fame and career longevity. These weren't fleeting flings, he insisted, but meaningful connections built on mutual understanding, shared vulnerability, and the unspoken code of secrecy that bound gay actors of the time together in silent fraternity. Among the names Lynde reportedly whispered, with a mixture of pride and melancholy, were leading men known for their masculinity and sex appeal. Actors whose fan bases stretched across the globe and whose public personas were curated with military precision. One such name was Rock Hudson, a close friend and occasional confidant whose own sexuality would only be widely acknowledged after his tragic death from AIDS 1985. According to Lynde, he and Hudson had a brief but tender liaison in the early 1960s, when both were navigating the suffocating confines of studio-imposed heterosexual facades. "We laughed a lot," Lynde was said to have remarked in a private moment. "There was an ease between us, like we were both wearing the same mask, and for a little while we took it off." Another name that reportedly surfaced in Lynde's private reminiscences was Tab Hunter, the all-American heartthrob whose Beach Boy looks and quiet charm concealed a lifelong struggle with his own identity. In interviews long after Lynde's death, Hunter acknowledged same-sex relationships but remained guarded about details. Lynde, on the other hand, is said to have recounted a brief but electric summer spent in Malibu with Hunter, full of sunset drives, shared drinks, and whispered promises they both knew could never be fulfilled. "He was scared of the tabloids," Lynde once said, "but I don't blame him. We all were." Even more surprising were rumors that Lynde had affairs with actors whose reputations rested on playing virile cowboys or commanding soldiers, men like Ramon Novarro, Van Johnson, or Anthony Perkins, each rumored in their own right to have struggled with their public image and private truth. Perkins, famously complex and emotionally guarded, was said to have found in Lynde a rare outlet for laughter and levity, two qualities often missing in the brooding actor's tightly controlled world. He needed someone who could make him laugh at how ridiculous Hollywood was, Lynde allegedly quipped. "And honey, nobody did ridiculous better than me." But these relationships, as passionate as they may have been, were always conducted in the shadows. Lynde often lamented the cost of living a life unacknowledged, once comparing himself to an understudy in a tragic play, always waiting in the wings, never allowed center stage. Though he joked about everything, his humor often masked a deep sense of isolation. "We were all in the same boat," he once said, perhaps after too many martinis at a Sunset Strip bar. Only we couldn't call it a love boat. Even as he became a beloved television personality, known for his razor-sharp delivery and campy innuendo on Bewitched and Hollywood squares, Lynde remained a man who longed for authenticity, but lived in a world that punished it. His private stories of love with closeted actors weren't mere gossip. They were part of a broader, unspoken history of queer lives hidden beneath the glittering surface of old Hollywood. They were acts of defiance, courage, and above all, intimacy, shared in moments of vulnerability between men who knew that the truth of their hearts could never be allowed to reach the silver screen. Today, in a more open era, Paul Lynde's rumored romances with these hidden Hollywood figures invite not scandal, but reflection. Reflection on the cost of silence, the strength of survival, and the complicated beauty of love lived behind closed doors. On the night of January 10, 1982, concern for comedian and television personality Paul Lynde began to grow among his close friends when he failed to show up for a planned birthday celebration. Lynde, known for his sharp wit, flamboyant humor, and vibrant personality, was typically prompt and social, especially when it came to gatherings with those closest to him. One of his longtime friends, actor and model Paul Baresi, grew increasingly worried as the evening wore on with no word from Lynde. It was not in Lynde's nature to miss an event without notice, and Baresi's anxiety mounted when repeated phone calls to Lynde's home in Beverly Hills, California, went unanswered. Accompanied by another friend, actor Dean Dittman, Baresi drove to Lynde's house, hoping to find that perhaps Lynde had simply fallen asleep or had been delayed. Upon arriving at the stately Beverly Hills residence, the two friends knocked persistently on the front door, calling out to Lynde through the windows and attempting to get his attention in any way they could. The house remained eerily silent. No lights flicked on, no sign of movement could be seen, and an unsettling stillness hung in the air. When their efforts continued to yield no response, Baresi made the difficult decision to take drastic action. Fearing for his friend's well-being, he found a way to enter the home through a side entrance. As he pushed his way inside, the house alarm immediately began to blare, indicating that the security system had been fully engaged, something Lynde was known to do habitually each night before going to bed. The piercing siren of the alarm cut through the silence, offering the first chilling sign that something was terribly wrong. Baresi made his way through the house and into Lynde's bedroom, where he discovered the beloved comedian lying motionless in his bed. It was the early morning hours of January 11th, 1982. Tragically, Paul Lynde had passed away during the night. He was only 55 years old at the time of his death. His sudden and unexpected passing sent shockwaves through the entertainment community and among fans who had come to adore him for his memorable roles on shows like Bewitched, Hollywood Squares, and numerous variety specials. His unique voice, signature laugh, and flamboyant screen presence had made him a household name throughout the 1960s and 1970s. In the aftermath of Lynde's death, speculation began to circulate in Hollywood gossip circles and tabloid media. Rumors emerged suggesting that Lynde had not been alone at the time of his death, and that a mysterious visitor had fled the scene before help arrived. These unconfirmed reports painted a sensationalized picture of Lynde's final moments, feeding into the era's often unfair and invasive scrutiny of celebrity lives, particularly those of LGBTQ+ figures like Lynde, who had lived as a closeted gay man due to the pressures and prejudices of the time. However, A more thorough investigation quickly dispelled the speculative stories. Law enforcement officials and friends close to Lynde, including Baresi himself, noted key evidence that contradicted the rumor mill. Most notably, the fact that the house alarm had been fully engaged at the time of Baresi's entry suggested that no one else could have entered or exited the home without triggering the system. The alarm going off upon Baresi's break-in strongly indicated that Lynde had, in fact, been alone in the house and had passed away quietly in his sleep. Furthermore, contradicting lurid claims that Lynde had been found unclothed, Baresi publicly stated that Lynde had been fully dressed for bed, wearing his pajamas and a robe. A quiet and dignified end that clashed with the sensationalized portrayals being floated by gossip columns. The official ruling from the Los Angeles County coroner confirmed that Paul Lynde had died of a heart attack. While he had struggled with alcohol abuse throughout much of his adult life, a fact he often alluded to in his comedy, there was no indication of foul play, drugs, or trauma. His death was deemed natural, though sudden, and served as a somber reminder of how even those who seem full of energy and laughter can be taken in the blink of an eye. He wasn't just delivering punchlines, he was hiding love stories the world wasn't ready to hear. Paul Lynde's secret romances weren't scandal, they were survival. Quiet, powerful acts of truth in a time that demanded masks. If this story hit your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to LGBTQ+ Vibes, where the untold is finally heard. Because the brightest stars often shine hardest when no one's watching.